You're listening to Trek FM.
Welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th anniversary Star Trek Rewatch. We're going through all 729 Star Trek adventures, from Enterprise to Star Trek Beyond, and everything in between. Yeah, that's the official way we say Star Trek Beyond here on Trek FM. I'm Zach, and today I'm joined by the first-time Trekker herself, Andi. What's up, Andi?
Not much. I'm excited to talk about Blood Oath today.
Yes, Blood Oath, I'm very excited to talk about. We're going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about Blood Oath.
Just
so let's
Blood
jump into it. No, it's our job to talk about each and every episode and an adventure of Star Trek.
I made Daniel talk about Alexander, so this is my medicine. I gotta take it.
Yeah, so we're talking about Deep Space Nine's Blood Oath and Star Trek The Next Generation's Journey's End. But let's start off with a good note. Talk about Blood Oath. Andi, why don't you summarize this episode for us?
So, Blood Oath is the episode when we find out that Dax is basically a Klingon in her soul. 3 Klingons come to the station, and you find out that Curzon Dax made a blood oath to avenge the death of children, and she agrees to do that, even though there are some moral quandaries there, and it's basically an awesome episode. Can I just say, okay, this is my new summary. You ready for it? Dax with a batleth, A++.
Agreed. And, it's not just any 3 Klingons.
Oh, yes.
It's Kor, Koloth, and Kang from the original series, the 3 most famous Klingons that were featured in TOS, and they're older now, and I guess is this the first episode that establishes Klingons live a lot longer than,
I guess
than
so.
humans, I guess. I don't know who came up with that, but sure. And, they have foreheads, so clearly something has happened between TOS and TNG, but as Worf goes on to say in Deep Space Nine, we do not discuss it with outsiders. So, I love this episode. This is a great episode for a lot of Klingon mythology, and that's what Deep Space Nine did so well, really. It really embraced the original series and was a natural continuation to it. I feel like early Next Generation, and this was, Roddenberry's edict from the beginning, was we don't talk about TOS, we can't say Spock, all these weird rules they had about not referencing TOS. Deep Space Nine is all about it. It embraces this rich history Star Trek has, brings back characters that we know and love from a previous series, and it works very well. Now, would this episode have worked with 3 Klingons we had never met before? Sure. Yeah, but it would not have been as fun.
It would not have been as cool. It would not have been as connected to the larger universe. I think it's just truly wonderful that they decided to, not 1, not 2, but all 3 of them come back. And I just think that that's so cool. It's just a lovely continuation of their stories. And
they make Koloth a lot more of a badass here than he was in TOS.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I love the scene between Odo and him. He's like, "How did you get in here?" It's like, "I am Koloth." That didn't answer my question.
Yes, it did.
Yes, it did.
Ooh. I love it. It's so good. I personally am a fan of Kang the most because he's a part of one of my favorite TOS episodes in which they laugh their problems away, and is one of my favorite screenshots of all time to see Kirk and Kang just going like, wah, ha, 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 ha. It's so great.
Slapping each other on the back, yeah.
So great. Now, if only that had worked in this episode, but alas, they must grab their batleths and charge into battle with Dax.
Yeah, what'd you think about, Dax's kind of, is it breaking, like, the Trill rules, obviously, and then, like, letting her previous life influence this life too much? What'd you think about that?
I love it. I mean, I understand, and one reason why I do like it is it's not clear-cut. One of my favorite scenes is actually Kira and Dax talking about the price of taking a life, the price of murder, basically. I love that conversation between them. It's a really sincerely, emotionally resonant moment where we get to see the pain Kira is in, and it's a small moment in this episode, but I think it's super important. And I like that maybe this is not the right thing to do. Maybe Dax made a mistake. Maybe what she's doing is wrong. But she makes her decision and she sticks to it, and it plays out in a way that is makes a really interesting story and a really interesting ethical dilemma. So I'm all for it, really. I like that Dax is not completely a rule follower. She's a little bit rebellious, and I like that about her. I think this is by far the best Dax episode of the early seasons.
Of the early seasons, yeah, perhaps so. And then even at the end, when she shows up, back at work the next day, and everybody kind of gives her some awkward, silent glances, and just goes to her station, and you get the feeling like, okay, things aren't going to be all, wine and roses here. Of course, Deep Space Nine was a little more episodic here in the early years, so we don't see, if this was like a season 6 or season 7, we might have seen more fallout from this. But it's early Deep Space Nine, still in the 90s television episodic nature, so this is a rather self-contained consequences to this episode, because she doesn't really get in trouble for this, does she?
No, not so much. But I think it kind of goes to the, I guess, aesthetic of DS9, in which they make morally gray choices in service of higher goals, and we can question whether they made the right choices, and it's just a little more cynical, a little more bleak, a little less optimistic than TNG is, and in this case I think it works really well. And it's also just a really fun episode. Like, you're always wanting to know what happens next.
Yeah, and a pretty good for getting some guys in their 60s or 70s. I'm not sure how old the older Klingons were, like the actors were at this point, but you get some good action moments, running around on the planet, bat-lething people. Stuff in Star Trek you don't really get to see a lot. Action set pieces like that, storming a stronghold, the albino stronghold. Now they call this guy the albino. Was he a Klingon? I wasn't really sure. He kind of had a weird forehead going on, but I'm not really sure if he was a Klingon or not.
I didn't get the sense that he was a Klingon, no. But, I mean, he just kind of is the villain. So they didn't really go into him very much. He basically was like a Bond villain, holed up in his, mountain cave with his tank full of sharks.
That's a good call.
But yeah, love Blood Oath. A++, 10 out of 10.
Agreed. Well, let's talk about the other end of the spectrum here, the other end of the Star Trek spectrum, Journey's End. So in Journey's End, we get the return of Wesley Crusher to the Enterprise D, which is always welcome, right? He's always welcome.
He is for me, but I know that he's not for everybody, and it still makes me sad that this is his send-off from the series.
Oh, it's let's be honest, it's terrible. This episode is terrible. I'm going to say it. Come at me, bro, but this is an awful episode. It pretty much is it character assassination? I don't know, but Wesley, see, the First Duty, right, was such an excellent episode. First Duty is one of my favorite episodes of the entire series, and that's where we last saw Wesley, right? And if you're going to do a follow-up with Wesley, let's follow up where how he's having to deal with the fact that, he got someone killed at Starfleet Academy, right? His decisions, his group's decisions, and him having to live with that, and maybe that is the burden that has been on him the last year or so that has made him to reevaluate his life choices. None of that is here. He's just kind of like, oh, man, you guys had such high expectations, and I can't live up to them, man. I just want to be like a traveler, bro. And it's just, he's insufferable in this episode. He is as insufferable as all his haters say he is all the time. He totally is in this episode.
He also is like complete character 180, because even if you hate Wesley, he's a sweet dude. He's nice, and in this episode he's like mean. And okay, I don't know about you, Zach, but I was a terrible teenager. I was sullen. I sat in the corner and I read books and I ignored everybody, and I was like, oh, I'm too cool to talk to you because I'm unhappy, and oh my god, I was a horrible teenager. I'm the first to admit it, and my mom is like, yeah, see? But this is, come on. Like, this is the way you want us to remember. Just, like, seeing him be so mean to Geordi, who is his friend, it's just...
Although I know Mike Schindler thinks Geordi's a jerk. He probably really enjoys this scene.
I don't know. Even if you don't like Geordi, like... He looks at something that Geordi has built and is super excited about, is like, this is crap. Like, that is just such... I can't, like, I want to throw something at him. Like, if I thought I could, like, throw something at my TV and it would hit him in the face, I would do it. Like, suddenly, this thing that he has professed to want through, like, 5 seasons of TNG, he no longer wants within the space of 20 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They should have built off of the First Duty, right? And that could have been a reevaluation of, like, where he was in life and all that stuff because of those events, but they don't even mention that. And it's just, he's, apparently just fed up of all the expectation that's been put on him over the years. And it's a bad call.
Life is so hard. I don't like it.
You don't understand, Mom. Okay.
It's just awful.
He's more of a teenager here than he was the first 5 years of TNG.
Yes. His maturity level drops like a rock, and he wasn't all that mature to begin with. I like Wesley, but come on, his intellectual maturity versus emotional maturity always had a huge disconnect. And in this one, it's just like he regresses 10 years. He's like a 13-year-old, basically.
Well, if there wasn't enough about that to hate, we have to talk about the Native Americans in this episode. I don't know what it is with science fiction and Native Americans, but just whenever they try to incorporate them in the story, they just usually, they fumble it. And it's so, it's uncomfortable? I don't know. What?
That's exactly the word I would use. When I was watching it, I just felt really awkward and uncomfortable. I was like, I can't quite put my finger on what is wrong here, but it's just not. Like, a lot of I can tell that they're trying to be respectful. I can absolutely feel that. But then it's also coming off as like super stereotypical, and it's uncomfortable. It makes me cringe.
Oh yes, cringe-worthy, facepalm inducing. I'm like doing the Picard meme watching this episode.
It's like, okay, we're gonna do a Indian ritual because they call them Indians.
Yeah, that's so weird. Why does he say North American Indians? He says that, Picard says that so many times. He's like, look, man, this is the mid-90s. I thought we had become a little more politically correct and not called them Indians anymore.
One of the problems of trying to portray the future in the past, so like, it definitely would not be okay in this time period to use the word Indians, but I just like, it's just one of those things that just like cringe. But the biggest thing for me when it comes to the portrayal of the Native Americans is the fact that they use them basically as a way to tell a story about Wesley. So they're basically just like props. You know what I mean? So it's like the Traveler uses them.
Well, the Traveler, was he that guy the whole time? I don't understand. Like, how long has he lived there?
He's like, not only are they doing these super stereotypical, like, shaman, Indian ritual kind of trope stuff, but they're using an alien to do it and not actually even a native person. And then it's all to further the story of emo white boy.
Oh, yeah. No, you totally. I mean, call it like it is, right? I just, the whole Traveler thing was like, oh, it's the Traveler. And you're like, that's cool to see him again. But then you're like, has he lived here for 20 years? Is this a new guy? Like, does anyone else know who this guy is in their community? Like, did he come here specifically for it added a whole nother like layer of confusion on top of all the events.
Here's another thing that I'm super confused about. Isn't this the exact opposite position that Picard takes in Insurrection?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the first time I'd seen this episode, I had not seen Insurrection. I just saw Insurrection like a couple months ago. But I'm watching this episode now, and I'm like, wait a second. What? This is a complete turnaround from Picard's stance then and now.
What would you prefer? Like, which version of Picard do you prefer? The one in this episode or the one in Insurrection?
The one in this episode makes more sense to me. Mm-hmm. Like, morally conflicted but doing his job.
Yes.
So, like, Admiral Nechayev is in this episode, who is my homegirl, by the way. But she does a good job of being like, look, I don't like these orders either. I have made my problems with these orders clear to Starfleet Command. Doesn't matter. The Council's voted. We're doing this. Do your job. And Picard's like, okay. I mean, sometimes doing your job means doing things that you're not completely comfortable with. And you can play around with that. Like, where is the tipping point where following orders becomes morally reprehensible? And you can absolutely explore that, and they have in Star Trek numerous times with great effect. But in this case, it's like zigzagging here. And then suddenly in Insurrection, Picard's like, nah, bro, I'm not going to follow my orders. I'm going to start a rebellion instead. And it's like, okay, that didn't really track to me at the time, but now it really doesn't track to me. Is it just because Donna Murphy wasn't there?
Yes, she was the missing element. This one moment of time.
That's the other thing. Like, when did people suddenly be able to just, like, randomly stop time Like, at the end of the episode, Wesley's like, oh, stop in time, no big deal.
And then they just wander off after that.
I know, they turn around, and, like, people are, like, phasering each other in the background, and they're just like, whatever.
Peace out, bro.
And they leave.
It's so unintentionally hilarious, yeah.
So, like, Wesley has gone from, do you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to take you away. And, like, making this huge moral stand. It's wrong, Picard. It's wrong. And then he's like, whatever.
Yeah. Such a poorly conceived episode on every level. Just every level. I don't know. It's a shame because, this is Wesley's last episode on Next Generation. The Maquis thing, or the demilitarized zone Cardassian thing is an interesting story, which Deep Space Nine, as often does, but that takes this botched idea from Next Generation and makes it much, much better.
Which we will be discussing.
Which we will be fortunately discussing tomorrow. Look forward to that. But yeah, and bottom line here, I'm sorry that these people moved to a planet that was under, dispute, but they shouldn't have moved there. And you know what? It's just a planet that you've lived on for 20 years. Why can't you move? I'm like totally with the Federation Council on this, to be honest.
No, man. He felt a connection to the mountains.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Can we please have a Native American character who's not about like vision quests and talking to the sky and stuff like that?
I do understand that people can be very attached to their land, and obviously the displacement of indigenous people is a huge issue that has occurred throughout our society's past. I don't feel like the exploration of that topic in this episode is executed well. It just feels extremely clumsy to me. I'm trying to think if there is anything that we want to bring up that is a positive about this episode, so we don't end with, it's terrible. Brah.
Nope, I have no positives. This is one of the worst episodes of Star Trek. Put me on record. Even cool stuff like the Traveler gets ruined by this episode, so, yeah.
Well, I always thought the Traveler was creepy anyway, because he's, like, wandering through the universe, like, spying on Wesley and being, like, creep. But I mean, if you did like The Traveler, this definitely is not a good episode.
Well, interestingly enough, but by a quirk of fate, I've done all the Traveler episodes here on From There to Here. So, and this is without question the worst.
I like him in Remember Me.
Oh yeah, that's his best episode. Beverly's best episode, obviously. So
yeah, totally.
So go watch those episodes instead of this one.
Instead of this one. I'm sorry. I really am trying to think of something good, but the only thing I can, like, the bleakest ray of sunshine that I can think of is at least at one point they have Beverly attempt to mother.
That's true.
Before she's undercut again by Picard and dead dad.
Dead
dad. Let Beverly do her job. She is his mom, and so often, like, all of the parent-child development is given to Picard. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, dead dad.
Well, that's all they give him in this episode. He basically comes out of nowhere like, I don't know, Mufasa in the sky, and is like, I'm dead, son, but you're not. Don't follow in my footsteps.
Oh, man. Well, that's Journey's End. I think our journey today has come to an end.
Nicely done.
Andi, if people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
Easiest place is on the internet on Twitter, at First Time Trek. You can also catch me as one of the hosts of Women at Warp.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter at MooreOnZach. That's MooreOnZach. And I'm also the host of my own podcast, Always Hold On to Smallville, talking about that young Superman TV show. You can find us on Twitter at AlwaysMallville. And we're both in the Babel Conference, so hey, if you guys like this episode, please let us know. I would be very interested to see people who like this episode, your opinions, why you liked it, why you thought worked. Clearly, we didn't think it worked, but I'm sure some of you out there did. Let us know. So Andi and I will be back tomorrow to talk about a good use of this storyline in the Maquis, parts 1 and 2.